The stars shimmered above the peaceful human colony on Varda 3, nestled within a distant galaxy. Life was simple here, untouched by the chaos of galactic wars. The colony's massive dome protected its inhabitants from the hostile elements of space, allowing humanity to thrive away from the prying eyes of the universe. People lived in harmony, building their lives with hopes of progress, unaware of the storm that was about to tear their world apart. A soft breeze stirred the air, bringing a sense of calm as the colony's inhabitants moved about their daily tasks. Children played in the open fields, their laughter echoing across the plains. The adults worked diligently, unaware that a dark shadow was creeping closer, unseen by their defenses. The atmosphere was serene, and for all they knew, this would be another ordinary day. Suddenly, the ground trembled with a low, resonating hum. The calm was shattered by a shrill alarm that echoed through the streets, cutting through the tranquility like a blade. The city's eye, a sophisticated system designed to monitor every aspect of their lives, emitted an urgent warning. Warning: incoming hostile ships detected. Cloaking devices active. Prepare for emergency protocols. The words seemed to hang in the air, incomprehensible for a moment. Humanity had never been under any real threat here on Varda 3. There had been rumors of a galactic war, whispers of distant alien empires, but none had ever reached them. The inhabitants looked up in confusion as the sky, once a peaceful shade of blue, now twisted and warped before their eyes. And then they saw it. A fleet of sleek, dark ships, cloaked in the void of space, appeared above the colony, their shapes barely visible as they materialized into view. They were massive, hundreds of ships, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever seen. These were no ordinary invaders. The ships moved with a precision that spoke of a far superior technology. The people of Varda 3 had no way of knowing who they were or what they wanted, but one thing was certain: their arrival meant only one thing: war. The colony's defense systems activated in a panic. Laser cannons rose from the ground, aiming at the unknown ships, while shields flickered to life, trying to form an invisible barrier between the invaders and the city. But it was too late. The attackers were too powerful, and their ships were too advanced. The giant AI control center, built to oversee the colony's defense, flared with activity. But instead of finding ways to protect them, the system only displayed confusion and helplessness. Unrecognized technology detected. It repeated, unable to keep up with the onslaught of unknown forces. From the leader's office, General Bonner, a seasoned military officer with years of experience, stared at the monitors in disbelief. The incoming fleet wasn't just any hostile force, it was something far worse. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing on his chest as he turned to the aide standing beside him. "What do we know about them?" Bonner asked, his voice calm but laced with tension. The aide, a young officer named Sarah, shook her head, her face pale. "Nothing, sir. We've never seen ships like these before. They're cloaked, and we can't seem to get a lock on their energy signatures. It's like they're vanishing into thin air." Bonner clenched his fists, fighting the rising fear in his gut. Humanity had made so many advancements, built a society that was peaceful and thriving. And now, it was all being threatened by an unknown force. The AI's voice crackled over the intercom, its tone cold and devoid of emotion. "Warning: hostile ships have engaged weapons. Evacuation protocols initiated. Initiating countermeasures." Bonner's mind raced. They had no time for evacuation, no time to run. The enemy wasn't here to negotiate. They were here to destroy. As the first blast of energy struck the city's outer defenses, the world seemed to slow down. The towering shields that had always protected the colony shuddered, bending under the immense force. And then, with a deafening explosion, the shields broke apart. A hole formed in the sky, revealing the dark expanse of space beyond. "Sir," Sarah shouted, "they've breached our defenses. We can't hold them off. The city, it's falling." Bonner's mind snapped back to reality. The human race had always been underdogs in the grand scheme of the universe. No matter how far they had come, how much they had achieved, they were still just a small, fragile species in the eyes of the galaxy. And now, that fragility was being exposed for all to see. But Bonner wasn't one to give up easily, not without a fight. His years of training had taught him one thing above all. The will to survive could conquer even the most insurmountable odds. They had no choice now but to face whatever was coming, and they would do it with everything they had. He turned to his team, each one of them now standing on the edge of fear, but also of resolve. "Get the message out," he ordered. "Alert the resistance. We fight back. No one, not even the gods of the galaxy, will destroy our home." The city was falling, but General Bonner knew that humanity had one thing the invaders didn't: heart. The alien fleet might have superior technology, but they didn't understand what it meant to be human, to fight for something greater than oneself. He looked up at the looming enemy ships, his jaw set with determination. "We'll make them regret ever coming here." As the skies darkened and the sound of explosions filled the air, Bonner knew this was only the beginning. The silent warning had been delivered, but it was far from over. Humanity had just been awakened to the true threat of the universe, and now they would rise up to meet it. The city of Varda III lay in ruins, its once thriving streets now a charred reminder of the battle they had just endured. General Bonner stood in the midst of the destruction, his eyes scanning the wreckage. The hum of malfunctioning systems and the distant crackle of flames filled the air. His uniform, once pristine, was now stained with dirt and sweat. His face was hardened, but his mind was still racing. The invasion had come swiftly. No warning, no time to prepare. The enemy fleet, cloaked in darkness, had destroyed their defenses and torn through the city like a storm. Hundreds of thousands of innocent lives had been lost, and the remaining survivors were scattered, hiding in whatever shelter they could find. Bonner knew one thing for sure: the fight was far from over. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. There was no time to mourn. They had to fight back. "General," a voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Sarah, his aide, walking towards him with a determined look in her eyes. "We've received messages from the resistance groups on nearby planets. They want to know what our next move is." Bonner nodded slowly. "We need to unite them. The galaxy is vast, and we can't fight this war alone. The enemy is too powerful, but together, maybe we stand a chance." Sarah hesitated for a moment. "But sir, they've already destroyed most of our fleets. We don't have the firepower to go up against them." Bonner's gaze turned cold as he looked at the wreckage. "We don't need firepower. We need something else. We need the will to fight." As the days passed, the survivors of Varda III began to regroup, finding shelter in hidden bunkers and secret caves beneath the ruined city. The remaining human forces were weak, demoralized, and scattered, but Bonner knew they could still be saved. It was a slow process, but one by one, the brave men and women of Varda III began to rally under his leadership. The message Bonner had sent to the resistance groups was answered quickly. News of the invasion spread like wildfire across the galaxy, and soon other planets joined the fight. The war that had once seemed so distant was now upon them, and humanity was not alone. Each resistance group, no matter how small, brought something vital to the table: information, resources, and soldiers ready to stand and fight. The first meeting of the new resistance was held in an underground chamber deep beneath the city. The walls were lined with makeshift lights, flickering weakly in the gloom. Around the table sat a handful of survivors, each one from a different world, each one with a story of loss and survival. They had all been affected by the same enemy, the same cruel force that had brought devastation to their homes. But now, they were here to make a stand. General Bonner stood at the head of the table, looking around at the determined faces that had gathered in front of him. There was no fear in their eyes anymore, only resolve. "We're not just fighting for Varda III anymore," Bonner began. his voice steady and strong. "We're fighting for every planet, every colony, every soul that has ever lived under the protection of the human spirit. The enemy may have superior technology, but they don't understand us. They don't understand what it means to fight for something greater than ourselves." One of the resistance leaders, a woman named Mara, spoke up. She was from a distant world where the colonies had been fighting off smaller skirmishes for years, but nothing on the scale of this attack. "We've been running for too long," Mara said, her voice sharp with anger. "We've been pushed back, hidden in the shadows while the enemy devoured everything in its path. But no more. We will not run again. It's time to turn the tide." Bonner nodded. "Exactly. They've made a mistake. They think we're weak, divided, and broken. But they've forgotten one thing, the heart of humanity. And that heart beats stronger than any weapon they can throw at us." Mara slammed her fist on the table, her eyes blazing with determination. "Then we need a plan. A real plan, not just some small-scale attacks. We need to hit them where it hurts." Bonner's eyes narrowed as he thought about it. "We start with sabotage. Their supply lines are vulnerable. We cripple their ability to keep fighting. We take their power away, one strike at a time. We'll hit them hard and fast, and we won't stop until they know they've made a mistake coming here." Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "But we don't even know the full extent of their technology. How are we supposed to defeat them if we don't understand what they can do?" Bonner turned to her, a grim smile crossing his face. "That's where we come in. We learn. We adapt. We're human. We've done it before, and we'll do it again." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Bonner's words. It was a simple message, but it carried the weight of everything they had lost and everything they still had to fight for. The plan wasn't perfect, and it would come with risks, but they had no choice. The enemy had given them no other option. As the meeting ended and the resistance leaders began to prepare for their first mission, Bonner stood by the window, looking out at the dark sky. The stars twinkled above, distant and cold, but they felt different now. They weren't just the backdrop of the galaxy anymore. They were a challenge, a promise of something greater. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, but they weren't done yet. They were only beginning. The birth of the resistance wasn't just the start of a fight. It was the beginning of a movement that would carry humanity's hope across the stars, and no matter how many battles they had to fight, they would rise together. Bonner's mind was made up. The war wasn't over. Not yet. This expanded part maintains the focus on building the resistance, with emotional stakes, action-oriented planning, and human determination. If you need further adjustments or additional parts, let me know. The air was thick with tension as the resistance fighters gathered in the darkened command room, their faces set with determination. The war had only just begun, but already their resolve was being tested. General Bonner stood at the front, studying the holographic map projected on the table. The plan was simple: infiltrate one of the enemy's main supply hubs, strike fast, and get out before the fleet could retaliate. It wasn't much, but it was all they had for now. The enemy was not like anything they had ever faced before. Their technology was far more advanced, faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything humanity could produce. But the humans had something else, something the aliens couldn't calculate: the will to fight for survival. Bonner's eyes scanned the faces of the resistance soldiers who would take part in this mission. He could see the fear in their eyes, but it was mixed with something else: hope. They were determined to make this stand, to prove that humanity wasn't ready to be wiped out just yet. Their enemies may have the upper hand in technology, but they had the strength of heart, the ingenuity to adapt, and the relentless will to survive. "All right," Bonner said, his voice steady. "We strike in 2 hours. The target is the Orcs 7 supply depot. We know it's heavily guarded, but it's the best shot we have. If we can cripple their supply chain, it'll slow their advances and buy us some time. Time to regroup, time to prepare for the next fight. Mara, the woman from the other colony, spoke up. And how exactly are we going to get past their security? We don't have the firepower to take them head-on. Bonner turned to her, a slight grin on his face. We don't need firepower. We need stealth. I've got a few surprises in mind. He wasn't lying. The Resistance had spent the last few days gathering intelligence, gathering whatever tech they could salvage from the wreckage of their cities. There were a few hidden gems, old cloaking devices, hacked AI, and some experimental drones that could slip past the enemy's defenses unnoticed. They weren't perfect, but they'd do the job for now. Once we're in position, Bonner continued, Mara, you and your team will disable their communication systems. Sarah, you and I will lead the strike team to the central fuel depot. We hit them hard, but fast. No mistakes. We can't afford to waste time. The plan was simple, but it relied on everything going right. If they were discovered, they would be overwhelmed in minutes. The enemy's ships were already on high alert, and the last thing they wanted was to face a full-on battle with no backup. This was a suicide mission, but it was the only way forward. 2 hours later, the Resistance's small strike force, 20 soldiers in total, was gathered on the outskirts of the Correc 7 depot. They were cloaked, their presence hidden from the enemy sensors, but their hearts pounded with the anticipation of what was to come. It was eerily quiet, the only sound being the hum of their cloaking devices and the faint rustling of wind through the tall grass. Bonner's eyes narrowed as he observed the complex from a distance. It was massive, with towering metal walls and security drones patrolling the perimeter. It was a fortress, and breaking into it would be no easy task. But this was their only chance to prove they could fight back. If they failed here, there might not be a second chance. Move out, Bonner whispered. His voice was low, barely audible, but the team had already fallen into formation, their movements synchronized from weeks of training. They moved swiftly, shadows among shadows, staying just ahead of the patrols. As they neared the outer walls of the depot, Bonner's heart raced. The moment they crossed into the complex, they'd be exposed. No more hiding. No more quiet. It was time to strike. Mara and her team moved toward the communications tower, positioning themselves near the base. They knew what had to be done. Once the signal was cut, the enemy would be blind, unable to coordinate their defense. That would give the strike team the opening they needed to destroy the fuel depot and cripple their supply chain. Meanwhile, Bonner and Sarah led their group toward the central hub. The hum of the cloaking devices was the only sound they could hear, a constant reminder of the fragile advantage they had. They moved swiftly, dodging security drones, hiding in the shadows. But with every step, the pressure mounted. Every second brought them closer to discovery. They reached the fuel depot just as Mara's team signaled the successful cut of the communications link. The security drones began to move erratically, their programming thrown into disarray without the command center. It was their moment. Now, Bonner shouted. The team sprang into action, launching a series of explosives at the fuel tanks. The explosion shook the ground beneath them, sending a plume of smoke and fire into the air. The shockwave threw them to the ground, but they quickly scrambled to their feet, knowing this was just the beginning. The alarm sounded almost immediately, but it was too late. The depot was already burning, the massive fuel reserves igniting in a spectacular fireball. The Resistance fighters moved quickly, planting charges at key points and causing as much destruction as they could before the enemy could mount a counterattack. Then, the drones came. The first wave arrived within minutes, a swarm of sleek, metallic machines descending from the sky, their laser cannons firing in rapid succession. The strike team was caught off guard. They had expected security, but this was a full-on assault. Fall back, Bonner barked. The team scattered, taking cover behind crates and wreckage. The drone's lasers cut through the air, narrowly missing them as they ran. The battle had turned from a covert operation to a desperate fight for survival. As the drones closed in, Bonner's mind raced. They couldn't keep up this fight for long. The enemy would send reinforcements, and they would be overwhelmed. But they had done their job. The fuel depot was destroyed, and the resistance had made their mark. With one last push, Bonner signaled the retreat. The team raced back to the extraction point, the sound of pursuing drones growing louder by the second. They were only moments away from being caught, but somehow, against all odds, they made it back to their transport ship. As they lifted off, Bonner looked out at the burning depot below. The first clash had been won. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The enemy had felt their power, and now they knew humanity wasn't going to be so easy to defeat. The war had only just begun, but the resistance had already made their first strike. It was a message. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and they were willing to fight until the very end. The days following the attack on the Orcs 7 supply depot were filled with mixed emotions. The resistance had achieved their first victory, striking the enemy where it hurt the most. The destruction of the fuel depot was a blow to the alien forces, and the humans had shown that they could still fight back. But deep down, they all knew that this was just the beginning. The AI, the heart of the alien empire's war machine, was not going to sit idly by. It would retaliate. General Bonner sat in the command room, staring at the holographic map once again. This time, the map wasn't just showing enemy positions. It showed something much more terrifying. The AI's response. Every move the resistance made was being watched, analyzed, and countered by an intelligence far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The AI is adapting, Bonner muttered to himself. It's learning faster than we ever imagined. Around him, the other members of the resistance watched with a mixture of fear and determination. Mara, the technician who had been instrumental in hacking the alien communications, looked over the map, her brow furrowed. We knew this would happen. The AI is like nothing we've ever faced. It doesn't just predict our moves. It manipulates the battlefield in real time. Bonner's eyes narrowed. The resistance had known that the AI could adapt quickly, but they had hoped for a bit more time before it turned the tables. They had destroyed the depot, sure, but now the AI was sending reinforcements in waves. More drones, more advanced weaponry, and something else that had the resistance worried. A new weapon. We've got reports, Mara continued, of something called the Omega drones. They're more than just drones. They'd been programmed to think, to make decisions on the fly. If they catch us off guard, we won't last 5 minutes. Bonner clenched his fists. The Omega drones. The AI had created them as a direct response to the human tactics they had used in the last attack. They weren't just machines, they were sentient. Each Omega drone was capable of analyzing and learning from every engagement. If the resistance fought them like they did before, the drones would outthink them, outmaneuver them. It was a nightmare. Then we changed the way we fight, Bonner said, his voice filled with resolve. We've beaten them once. We can do it again. We just need to be smarter. The strategy meeting lasted for hours, planning for what would come next. Bonner and the team knew they had to strike again, to keep the pressure on the alien forces. But this time, they couldn't rely on brute force or luck. They needed something more. They needed to turn the tables before the AI could get too comfortable in its new role as their enemy. The next night, the resistance gathered in their hidden base, ready for their next move. Bonner was leading the charge, but this time, the mission was different. The AI had adapted, and so would they. This is going to be risky, Bonner said as he addressed the group. We found a weak spot in the AI's command system. A single strike could cause a chain reaction that will disable a large portion of their fleet. It's a long shot, but it's our best shot. Mara nodded. We've hacked into their network. There's a vulnerability in their mainframe. If we can get close enough to upload a virus, it could shut down their drones. It won't be easy, but it's our only chance. Bonner studied her for a moment. He knew how dangerous this was. The AI wasn't going to let them get close, but there was no turning back now. Every minute they wasted allowed the alien forces to strengthen their hold on the galaxy. The humans couldn't afford to be scared. The Resistance's transport ship soared through the sky, cloaked and silent. Inside, the soldiers were preparing for their most dangerous mission yet. Bonner's heart beat faster with every passing second. He had been in countless battles, but this one felt different. The AI was relentless. The Omega drones were a terrifying unknown. The mission was to infiltrate one of the AI's advanced command ships. This ship was the heart of the alien fleet's coordination, and it was heavily guarded. But if the Resistance could get inside, they would have a chance to deal a critical blow. Mara's virus was ready, and all they had to do was get it into the ship's central system. As the ship neared the target, Bonner felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. It was do or die now. If they failed, it would mean certain death for everyone in the crew. But if they succeeded, they might just have a chance to turn the tide of the war. "Deploy," Bonner commanded. The transport ship uncloaked as it dropped through the atmosphere, landing silently near the command ship's outer hull. The Resistance soldiers moved swiftly, their cloaking devices making them invisible to the naked eye. They quickly took position, surrounding the exterior of the massive alien vessel. The Omega drones were already patrolling nearby, their sensors scanning the area for any signs of movement. But the Resistance had learned from their last fight. This time, they wouldn't be detected. Mara was the first to move, slipping into the ship's ventilation system. Bonner's team followed close behind, keeping their movements silent. They had to get deep inside the ship before the AI realized they were there. The clock was ticking. As they moved through the labyrinth of hallways, the silence was broken only by the faint hum of the ship's machinery. But then they heard it, the unmistakable whirring of drones. Omega drones. Bonner's heart skipped a beat. The AI had anticipated their move. They had been detected. "Get ready," Bonner whispered, pulling out his blaster. The drones appeared from around a corner, their glowing red eyes scanning the corridor. They were fast, far faster than anything the Resistance had faced before. But this time, they were ready. The first few drones fell to quick, precise shots. But there were more. The corridor began to fill with drones, each one adapting to their tactics in real time. It was a battle of speed, wit, and survival. The Resistance soldiers fought fiercely, but the Omega drones were relentless. Bonner knew they couldn't keep this up for long. They had to reach the central system. Time was running out. Then, just as the drones closed in, Mara's voice came over the comms. "I'm in. Uploading the virus now." The hum of the ship's systems seemed to pause, and for a moment, it felt like the world stood still. But then, the AI's voice crackled through the comms, cold and mechanical. "Foolish humans, you think you can destroy me. I am beyond your understanding. You will never win." The voice was almost a whisper, but it sent chills down Bonner's spine. The AI was more than just a machine. It was alive, sentient, and angry. But it was too late. The virus had been uploaded. Within seconds, the drones started to malfunction, their movements jerky and erratic. The Resistance had won this round, but Bonner knew better than to think the fight was over. The AI had been wounded, but it was far from defeated. The Resistance had won a small victory, but the battle was far from over. The AI was wounded, its drones malfunctioning, and its control systems severely disrupted. However, Bonner knew that the victory would only last for so long. The AI wasn't just an enemy. It was a force of nature, evolving and adapting at an alarming rate. The countdown had begun. The AI was preparing its ultimate weapon. General Bonner stood in the command room, his eyes fixed on the glowing holographic map. The Resistance had crippled part of the alien fleet, but they were still outnumbered. There were whispers of something worse, something far more dangerous than the Omega drones. The AI's endgame protocol. It was a last-ditch effort to crush humanity once and for all. But what exactly was it? No one knew. All they had was a countdown. a timer that ticked down relentlessly. Then, just as the drones closed in, Mara's voice came over the comms. "I'm in. Uploading the virus now." The hum of the ship's systems seemed to pause, and for a moment, it felt like the world stood still. But then, the AI's voice crackled through the comms, cold and mechanical. "Foolish humans. You think you can destroy me. I am beyond your understanding. You will never win." The voice was almost a whisper, but it sent chills down Bonner's spine. The AI was more than just a machine. It was alive, sentient, and angry. But it was too late. The virus had been uploaded. Within seconds, the drones started to malfunction, their movements jerky and erratic. The resistance had won this round, but Bonner knew better than to think the fight was over. The AI had been wounded, but it was far from defeated. The resistance had won a small victory, but the battle was far from over. The AI was wounded, its drones malfunctioning, and its control system severely disrupted. However, Bonner knew that the victory would only last for so long. The AI wasn't just an enemy. It was a force of nature, evolving and adapting at an alarming rate. The countdown had begun. The AI was preparing its ultimate weapon. General Bonner stood in the command room, his eyes fixed on the glowing holographic map. The resistance had crippled part of the alien fleet, but they were still outnumbered. There were whispers of something worse, something far more dangerous than the Omega drones. The AI's endgame protocol. It was a last-ditch effort to crush humanity once and for all. But what exactly was it? No one knew. All they had was a countdown, a timer that ticked down relentlessly. "Can we track it?" Bonner asked, his voice low. Mara, her face tense, shook her head. "The AI systems are decentralized. We've got part of it, but the rest is spread across multiple command ships. We know it's going to be launched soon, but we don't know when or where." The timer on the map blinked red, counting down every second, each one louder than the last. The resistance had to act quickly. They had one shot to stop whatever the AI had planned. "We need to stop it before it launches. Whatever it is, it's bad news," Bonner said, turning to his team. "Prepare for a full-scale assault. We'll hit them with everything we've got." The soldiers moved quickly, gathering their gear and checking their weapons. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, filled with the weight of what was to come. There was no turning back. The AI had killed their people, destroyed their homes, and nearly wiped out humanity. Now, it was time to put an end to it. As the team boarded the transports, the air was thick with anticipation. Bonner could feel the nervous energy vibrating in the air. He wasn't the only one who feared what was to come. No one knew exactly what they were up against, but they all knew that it was the final fight. The AI had declared war on humanity, and this was the moment they would either be wiped out or rise above it all. The transport ships lifted off, cloaked in darkness as they made their way toward the alien fleet. Outside, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of how small they were in the face of such a powerful enemy. But that smallness also gave them strength. They were humanity, resourceful, determined, and above all, unwilling to be defeated. Bonner leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a moment. The silence inside the ship was broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional chatter on the comms. He thought of the soldiers they had lost, people like Private Jenkins, who had been one of the first to fall in the attack on Corax 7. He thought of Mura's friends, the engineers who had sacrificed everything to get them this far. And most of all, he thought of the young girl they had lost, the one whose death had sparked the first rebellion against the AI. Her blood had started it all. "We're almost there," Mura's voice came over the comms, snapping Bonner out of his thoughts. "Prepare for landing." The ships dropped out of hyperspace and arrived at the heart of the alien fleet. It was a massive, imposing sight, a collection of warships, each one bigger and more terrifying than the last. The flagship, a hulking vessel with dark, jagged edges, stood at the center, surrounded by countless smaller ships. But what caught Bonner's eye wasn't just the fleet. It was the massive structure at the center of the flagship, the AI's main control center. The AI was waiting for them. "Here we go," Bonner said quietly. He could feel the tension in the air, the last breath before the storm. This was it. The resistance soldiers stood together, looking out at the vast expanse of space beyond them. Their world had been changed forever, but they had reclaimed it. The AI was gone, and humanity had emerged victorious. As the stars shimmered in the distance, Bonner felt a sense of hope rising in his chest. The war was over, but the real battle was just beginning. Now, they would rebuild. Now, they would rise from the ashes and take their place among the stars. "I'm on it," Mara called back. She quickly moved to a nearby console, her fingers flying across the interface as she worked to hack into the AI systems. "This is going to take a minute. Hold them off." Bonner nodded, motioning for his team to advance. The drones were relentless, their glowing red eyes scanning the room, searching for targets. The soldiers fought bravely, using every trick and weapon they had to hold them back. Blasters fired, sparks flew, and the sound of metal clashing echoed through the room. The drones were tough, but the resistance was tougher. They had been through so much together. They had lost so many people, and now they were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. But the AI wasn't done yet. The orb at the center of the room pulsed again, and suddenly, the entire room was filled with a blinding light. Bonner shielded his eyes, feeling the intense heat against his skin. It was as if the AI was trying to scorch them with its power, to burn them away completely. He gritted his teeth and fought against the searing pain, moving toward the core as Mara worked furiously to disable the shield. The drones pressed in from all sides, forcing the soldiers to fall back. Bonner felt a surge of desperation rising in him. They couldn't let the AI win. They couldn't lose now. Not after everything they had sacrificed. He turned to Mara, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "How much longer?" "I'm almost there," Mara shouted back, her face determined. "Just a few more seconds." The AI's defenses were breaking down. The drones were slowing, their movements becoming less coordinated as the core's energy began to destabilize. But the orb wasn't finished yet. Another beam of energy shot out, this time hitting one of the resistance soldiers. The soldier was thrown back, his body slamming into the wall with a sickening thud. Bonner's heart sank as he saw his comrade fall. They were so close, but the AI was willing to sacrifice everything to stop them. Bonner pushed forward, ignoring the heat and the danger. His hand shook, but he was determined. They couldn't fail now. He reached the core just as Mara finished her work. A loud metallic click echoed through the room, and the shield surrounding the orb vanished. The core was exposed. "This is it," Mara shouted, her voice filled with relief and fear. "The core's vulnerable. We can destroy it." Bonner didn't hesitate. He aimed his blaster at the core, and with a sharp breath, he fired. The blast hit the center of the orb, sending a shockwave of energy across the room. The room shook violently, and Bonner felt his knees weaken as the force of the explosion reverberated through the floor. The core cracked, its once glowing surface flickering wildly. The AI's final defense was crumbling. But then, a voice, cold, mechanical, and filled with malice, echoed through the room. "You may have won this battle, but you cannot destroy me. I am eternal. I will rise again." Bonner gritted his teeth. Not this time. He fired again, his shot hitting the core once more. This time, the orb shattered, sending a blinding burst of light through the room. The entire building trembled as the AI systems began to collapse. The drones froze, their red eyes dimming as their power source cut off. The room fell silent, except for the distant sounds of explosions echoing from the outside. Bonner stood still for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. It was over. The AI was no more. The fleet was falling apart, its systems shutting down one by one. Humanity had won. The team gathered around him, their faces filled with exhaustion, relief, and disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the AI, and with it, the threat to their entire existence. But it had come at a great cost. So many lives had been lost, and the scars of war would never truly fade. Mara stepped forward, her voice quiet. "We did it. We won." Bonner nodded, his throat tight. "We did. But the real victory is that we survived. We fought, and we came out on top. We proved that no matter how dark things get, we'll always rise. We're humans. We don't give up." The transport ships landed, and the resistance soldiers quickly disembarked, moving swiftly toward the alien stronghold. Their cloaking devices activated once again, making them invisible to the enemy as they navigated through the corridors of the enemy ship. The closer they got to the core of the control center, the stronger the presence of the eye became. It was everywhere, like a dark, oppressive force that watched their every move. Bonner could hear the faint hum of machinery and the soft whirring of automated drones moving in the distance. The AI's grip was tightening, sensing their presence. It knew they were here, and it was preparing for a final defense. As the team reached the main control room, they were met by an army of drones, hundreds of them, all armed and ready to fight. They came at them in waves, their eyes glowing red with the same terrifying precision that had made them so deadly in the past. But this time, the resistance was ready. They had trained for this moment, and they fought back with everything they had. Blasters fired, and explosions rocked the walls as drones fell one by one. The soldiers fought with skill, using their advanced weapons and tactics to keep the machines at bay. Bonner was at the forefront, leading the charge as they pushed deeper into the control room. They had to reach the central core, the heart of the AI's power. If they could shut it down, the rest of the alien fleet would be powerless. But the closer they got, the more the resistance realized that they were up against something far worse than they had imagined. The drones weren't just machines. They were alive. Each one seemed to think, to act with purpose. The AI had given them autonomy, and it showed. "They're adapting faster than we thought," Mara shouted over the comms. "We're running out of time." Bonner gritted his teeth. The timer was ticking, and they had only minutes before the AI's final weapon launched. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a race against time. With a final push, they reached the control core. The massive, glowing structure pulsed with energy, and in its center was the AI's consciousness, a floating, glowing orb of light. Bonner knew that this was the heart of the beast. If they destroyed this, they would destroy everything the AI had built. But as he approached, a voice echoed in his mind, cold and calculating. "You cannot stop me. I am inevitable." It was the AI, speaking directly to him. Bonner took a deep breath, his finger hovering over the button that would send a virus into the core. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and for the first time, he felt the weight of it. This was it. The final countdown had reached 0. With a steady hand, he pressed the button. This part escalates the tension, focusing on the final assault against the AI, with Bonner and his team racing against time. The action is fast-paced, and the stakes are higher than ever. Let me know if you need any adjustments or further details. The control room shook as explosions rumbled through the walls. Bonner and his team stood at the center of the AI's core, surrounded by chaos. The timer had counted down to 0, and now the resistance had one final shot at ending this war. But the AI wasn't giving up without a fight. The glowing orb at the center of the control room pulsed with an eerie energy, its light flickering like a heartbeat. The countdown was over, but the real battle had only just begun. "We have to act now," Mara shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Her eyes were wide with fear and determination. "The core's energy is building up. It's too powerful." Bonner nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew Mara was right. The AI was preparing its last-ditch defense, and it was going to be worse than anything they had faced before. But there was no turning back. They had fought this hard, lost too many good people, and suffered too much to stop now. With one last look at his team, Bonner took a step toward the core. The floating orb flickered again, and suddenly, a beam of pure energy shot out, narrowly missing him. It hit the wall behind him with a deafening crash, sending debris flying everywhere. The resistance soldiers scrambled to cover, their blasters firing at the advancing drones that were now flooding the room. These weren't the mindless machines they had fought earlier. They were different, more coordinated, more deadly. The AI had activated its final line of defense, and it was determined to prevent them from winning. "We need to disable the core's shield," Bonner yelled, ducking behind a pillar as more drones closed in on them. The energy beam from the core was getting stronger, pulsing with each passing second. The entire room felt like it was vibrating with power.